On an otherwise ordinary day in 1996, the police in Texas responded to a call that would uncover a devastating scene. The victim was a 50-year-old woman. Despite persistent efforts, no suspect emerged, and the case eventually went cold, leaving her loved ones without answers for nearly 3 decades. Geraldine Blackmon was born in 1946. By the age of 50, she made her home in Hopkins County, Texas. Geraldine had no reason to believe that her peaceful existence would face any sudden upheaval. Unbeknownst to her, the tranquility she relied upon was fragile. Without any warning, a shift in her world was approaching, one she could neither see nor prepare for. Geraldine could not have imagined the dangers that lay ahead. In 1996, the police received a call that brought them to a scene that they would later describe as deeply troubling. Upon arrival, they quickly identified the victim as Geraldine Blackmon. It was soon confirmed that she was deceased, her life cut short in a violent and unexpected way. The authorities later revealed that the autopsy performed on Geraldine determined her cause of demise. The examination showed that she was fatally shot. This single fact transformed the case into a serious criminal investigation, setting the officers on the path to uncover what had happened. The police began their work by retracing Geraldine's last known movements. They looked for any information that might reveal where she had been, who she had interacted with, and what circumstances had placed her in harm's way. Every detail from her final hours became a vital piece of the puzzle. The investigators also turned their attention to finding possible witnesses. They reached out to the community, hoping that someone had seen or heard something that could shed light on the events leading to Geraldine's demise. Even the smallest lead could have provided the break they needed. Despite these efforts, progress was slow. The investigation continued for some time, but no significant breakthroughs were made. With no solid evidence and no clear suspects, the investigation into Geraldine's case went cold. On July 8, 2025, the case that had gone cold for almost 3 decades took a dramatic turn. The police officials announced a major breakthrough when they identified the suspect as 71-year-old William Doyle Magnus of Midlothian, Texas. He was arrested and charged. The authorities acted quickly, executing a search warrant at Magnus's residence in Midlothian. During the search, they recovered a firearm barrel. This piece of evidence would prove to be critical in linking Magnus to the crime that had haunted the investigators for years. Forensic analysis on the recovered barrel revealed a direct connection to the case. Ballistics experts determined that it matched a bullet recovered from the original 1996 crime scene. This discovery provided the investigators with the pivotal piece of evidence they needed to move the case forward after so many years of uncertainty. The renewed progress was the result of persistent investigative work. Earlier in 2025, the Hopkins County Sheriff's Office, working alongside the Texas Rangers, reopened the case with fresh determination. They re-interviewed witnesses, re-examined physical evidence, and followed every available lead until this arrest was finally made. Magnus was taken into custody without incident and transported to the Hopkins County Jail. Following his arrest, his bond was set at $1 million, underscoring the seriousness of the charges against him. As of early August 2025, the investigation remains ongoing. Officials have chosen to withhold additional details at this time, leaving many questions unanswered as the legal process moves forward. Special recognition was given to Mrs. Cherry Rice, the original lead investigator assigned to the case in 1996. Sheriff Tatum stated, "Without the hard work and dedication of Mrs. Rice in the original investigation, this case would have never been solved. Her determination ensured that evidence and documentation were preserved for all these years, which proved instrumental in bringing us to this point. For those who had waited for justice for Geraldine Blackmon, this arrest marked a long-awaited step in the search for closure." In November 2018, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the police arrived to find a man with a gunshot wound to the head and rushed him to the hospital, where he lost his life 3 days later. However, the case went cold without enough proof to make an arrest. Alfred Trey Seymore was born in 1997. growing up with a personality that was as vibrant as it was magnetic. He attended Union High School, where he became involved in programs like ROTC. Though he had a reputation for being a wild kid, he responded well to discipline and structure, thriving when given clear guidance. His time in ROTC channeled his energy and helped shape his confidence, giving him both purpose and direction during his teenage years. Trey's nature drew people in. He was an outgoing individual, the kind who could make friends in any room he entered. His strength was not only physical, but also reflected in his loyalty and dedication to the people he loved. His family was the center of his world, and he had a giving heart that often put others before himself. Those who knew him often spoke of his ability to light up a conversation, his humor, and his easygoing charm that made him unforgettable to anyone who crossed his path. As Trey transitioned into adulthood, his aspirations began to take shape. By the age of 21, he had mapped out plans for his future, envisioning a new chapter for himself in Dallas, Texas. His plans were fueled by optimism. He looked ahead with the belief that life had more to offer, and he was ready to work for it. His family supported his vision, recognizing his determination and drive. They knew he was capable of making his dreams a reality, just as they knew how deeply he valued staying connected to the people he cared about. Yet, beneath the excitement and anticipation of what lay ahead, there were things Trey could not foresee. Life, as he knew it, was about to take a turn that no amount of preparation or discipline could have prevented. On November 12, 2018, Trey was sitting inside his vehicle in the parking lot of a Candlewood Suites near 71st Street and Highway 169. The night took a sudden and violent turn when two men approached his car, entered it, and, in a matter of moments, one of them opened fire. The shooter then fled the scene, leaving chaos in his wake. The act was swift, leaving no time for Trey to defend himself or escape the situation that had unfolded in an instant. The police officials quickly responded to the report of the shooting and arrived at the location within minutes. When they reached the parking lot, they found Trey inside his vehicle with a gunshot wound to the head. The scene was tense and urgent as first responders worked to stabilize him. He was rushed to the hospital, where medical teams fought to save his life. Despite their efforts, his condition remained critical, and several days later, on November 15th, he succumbed to his injuries. While his family mourned, law enforcement began the difficult task of uncovering what had happened and identifying the individuals responsible for the shooting. The investigation was immediately set into motion, with the police determined to find answers. Surveillance footage from the hotel became a crucial part of the early investigation. The video showed two men approaching Trey's vehicle and getting inside. After a brief period, the same two men were seen exiting the car. Moments later, one of them fired a single shot into the vehicle before fleeing on foot. This visual evidence confirmed the sequence of events, but still left investigators with many unanswered questions about motive and identity. At the time, the police examined Trey's phone for potential leads and found information linking one individual, Christopher Thompson, to the incident. The evidence suggested a possible connection between Thompson and the events that took place that night. However, despite this link, the details were not strong enough to move forward with an arrest. The investigative team lacked the conclusive proof needed to secure charges that could stand in court. Without new leads or definitive evidence, the case gradually lost momentum, and in the months that followed, it went cold. Over the course of several years, the crime division continued to diligently pursue the case, refusing to let it fade into obscurity. Through persistent investigation and gathering new evidence, they were eventually able to build a case that implicated Christopher Thompson. This breakthrough culminated on June 16, 2025, when Thompson was arrested in Broken Arrow and charged in the first degree. The arrest represented a major step forward in a case that had remained unresolved for nearly 7 years, reigniting hope for justice. The momentum did not stop there. On July 17th, Tulsa police announced the arrest of a second suspect, Blevin Williams, who was also charged in the first degree. Trey's mother, Kelly Johnson, upon hearing the news, expressed profound relief and gratitude. Having survived a stroke, she said that witnessing the arrests was a deeply meaningful moment in her life. She said, "I was able to survive my stroke to see it, to live to see it. I did not think I was going to." Her words carried the weight of years of pain and hope as she emphasized her desire not only for justice, but also for forgiveness. Her emotions were complex, reflecting both sorrow and a sense of peace amid the long struggle. In the midst of her grief, she found comfort in knowing that her son's legacy extended beyond his tragic demise. Trey had saved 8 lives through organ donation, a fact that brought her solace in the darkest times. This act of generosity offered a beacon of hope, reminding her that even in loss, there was something positive to hold on to. For Trey's family, friends, and the community, it was a moment that honored his memory and the life he lived. A life cut short, but not forgotten. Though the road ahead would involve legal battles and the painful revisiting of old wounds, the progress in the case marked the beginning of a new chapter. In October 2021, a 28-year-old man was discovered in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He was critically wounded and pronounced deceased shortly after. From the first response to the re-examination years later, every step reflected the unwavering pursuit of answers for a life cut short in the very place he called home. Trevoris Sheppard was born in 1993. At 28 years old, he lived in the city of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. On October 19, 2021, tragedy struck. Trevoris was shot in the 4400 block of 21st Street, an area known locally as the Hay Court Apartments. The incident unfolded suddenly. Passers-by quickly noticed a man in critical condition lying on the scene. Realizing the severity of the situation, they wasted no time in alerting the police. The Tuscaloosa police officers arrived promptly in response to the reports of a shooting in Hay Court. The atmosphere in the area was tense, and the officers immediately worked to assess the situation. When the officers reached him, Trevoris was in a critical state, suffering from a gunshot wound. His condition was grave, and every second mattered. Emergency responders acted swiftly to provide aid before transporting him for urgent medical attention. He was taken to DCH, the local hospital equipped to handle such emergencies. Despite the efforts of medical staff, the damage from the gunshot wound was too severe. Trevoris was pronounced deceased shortly after his arrival, marking a tragic and irreversible end to his life. The police officers began their investigation immediately, determined to uncover what had happened. Their goal was clear: to piece together the moments leading up to the shooting and identify whoever was responsible. The scene at Hay Court was carefully examined as the authorities searched for any clue that could point them in the right direction. Evidence collection became the first crucial step. The officers combed through the area, looking for anything that could explain the events of that day. From shell casings to possible surveillance footage, every detail was considered important in building a picture of what took place. Despite their efforts, the answers remained elusive. Witnesses, if any, were limited in what they could provide, and the trail of information was thin. Each lead the authorities followed seemed to fade before it could reveal anything substantial about the suspect or motive. The lack of progress frustrated the investigation. Days turned into weeks, yet there was no breakthrough that could bring them closer to finding the person responsible for Trevoris's demise. Without solid evidence, the case struggled to move forward, and eventually went cold. As the years passed, advancements in forensic and investigative technology became a valuable tool. This renewed approach breathed new life into this case that had once seemed stalled. Eventually, the persistent work of law enforcement yielded a breakthrough. The police were able to identify a suspect, Frederick Dwayne Lewis. At the time of the crime in 2021, Lewis was just 18 years old. After years of uncertainty, the name of a possible perpetrator gave the case a new and urgent focus. On July 5, 2025, Lewis was arrested. He was later released after posting a $75,000 bond, a development that underscored the ongoing legal process rather than the end of the matter. This formal charge signified that the evidence presented was strong enough to proceed toward trial, bringing the possibility of justice closer than it had been in years. The police emphasized that all slaying cases are treated as a priority by the Violent Crimes Unit. They stated that no case is ever closed until an arrest is made and justice is pursued. They commended all the investigators who contributed to the case, from the first officers on the scene to those who followed up in the months and years afterward, and finally to those who re-examined the evidence and presented it to the grand jury, acknowledging their persistence in seeking accountability for Trevoris. In December 2018, the sound of gunfire shattered the night in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Despite a lead, the trail went cold, and the case remained unsolved for years. Donalda Shortman was born on May 3, 1977, to parents Donald and Tracy. By the time she reached the age of 41, Donalda was living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. As an adult, Donalda's history included several brushes with the law. Her criminal record in New Mexico reflected charges that spanned different areas, including prostitution, violations involving business permit requirements, and issues connected to massage therapy licensing. These legal matters brought her before the courts on more than one occasion. While the specifics of each incident were not widely publicized, the records painted a picture of a woman who had navigated complicated circumstances. Each charge and hearing left an official trace, adding to a paper trail that documented her interactions with the legal system. Despite these challenges, Donalda continued to move forward, dealing with each situation as it arose and returning to her daily life once the legal processes concluded. On December 16, 2018, tragedy struck when Donalda was fatally shot near the intersection of Central Avenue Southeast and Dorado Drive Southeast in Albuquerque. The sound of gunfire drew immediate concern from those nearby, prompting an urgent call to law enforcement. For Donalda, the moment was final, an abrupt and violent end to her life. The police authorities responded swiftly to the call from a witness and quickly arrived at the scene. Emergency measures were not enough. She was declared lifeless at the location, leaving behind 2 children. The grim reality of the crime set in immediately, and the site was secured to preserve any potential evidence. As the officers began their initial work, the focus turned toward finding out what had happened and who was responsible. The detectives launched an investigation on the spot, gathering information from witnesses and surveying the area for clues. The urgency of the early hours was marked by the effort to understand the sequence of events leading to the shooting. One of the most critical leads came from a caller who reported seeing a man fleeing the scene shortly after the gunshots rang out. The witness described the individual as an African-American male, approximately 30 years old, around 5 feet 8 inches tall, wearing a black hat, a black shirt, and baggy blue jeans. He was seen running southbound in the vicinity, a detail that gave the investigators a potential direction to pursue. Despite this description, the trail quickly became difficult to follow. The investigators searched for connections, examined possible motives, and reviewed surveillance in the area, but no arrest was made. With no significant breakthroughs, the case grew cold. A breakthrough came in April 2025, years after Donalda's case had gone cold. A woman approached the police with crucial information that provided a direct link to the suspect. Through this information, the police were able to identify the suspect as Uriah Smith. According to the authorities, Smith's ex-wife had allegedly disclosed that he admitted to hurting a woman on the night of Donalda's crime. This revelation was a turning point, offering not only a name, but also a personal admission that could connect Smith to the crime. With renewed focus, the detectives revisited the evidence from 2018, including security video captured on the night of the shooting. The footage, re-examined with the benefit of fresh leads, gave them additional support to build their case. Combining the video evidence with the witness description and the new testimony, the investigators strengthened the chain of information pointing towards Smith. Tracking Smith became the next challenge. The police's efforts extended beyond state lines and into international territory, eventually leading them to Juarez, Mexico. There, the authorities located and apprehended him. His arrest closed a major gap in the investigation that had persisted for more than 6 years. At the time of his arrest, Smith was charged and was held in El Paso on the slaying charge and faced 2 additional felony warrants for aggravated assault and false imprisonment. These added charges painted a broader picture of his alleged criminal activity beyond Donalda's case. The police, who had previously sought public tips to solve the case, expressed that Donalda was finally able to receive the justice she deserved. The development marked the end of years of unanswered questions and the beginning of legal proceedings against the man accused of taking her life. In October 2011, the police were called to an abandoned house in Camden, New Jersey, where they found a 42-year-old man stabbed multiple times. Over a decade later, forensic analysis identified the suspect, whose DNA matched the profile from the original investigation. Brian Holden was born in 1969. At the age of 42, he was living in Camden, New Jersey. Brian was not living in isolation. He was in a romantic relationship, a connection that seemed to hold deep meaning for him. He loved his girlfriend dearly, a devotion that was apparent to those who knew him. This relationship formed an important part of his personal life, bringing emotional closeness and companionship. For Brian, life appeared steady and calm. There was no visible sign that anything was about to disrupt his routine or threaten his sense of stability. On October 11, 2011, Brian was stabbed multiple times inside an abandoned house. The violence of the attack was severe, leaving him gravely injured. Someone at the scene quickly alerted the police, and the officers responded without delay. Upon arriving, they identified the victim as Brian Holden and rushed him to Cooper University Hospital, where he was pronounced deceased. Following the confirmation of his demise, the police began their investigation to determine what had happened. They soon learned that the person who had alerted them was Brian's girlfriend. Her involvement became a central part of the early inquiries, as she had been present during the events leading to the stabbing. According to Brian's girlfriend, earlier that night, she had met another man at the abandoned property. She told the investigators that she had agreed to have intercourse with him in exchange for money. However, the encounter did not go as planned. An argument broke out between them, and during the dispute, the man took his money back. The situation escalated when the woman called out for Brian's help. Brian confronted the man, and during that confrontation, he was stabbed. The attack left him fatally wounded, setting in motion the chain of events that brought the police to the scene. The suspect fled before the officers arrived, leaving few immediate leads. The police shifted their focus toward identifying the suspect. As part of the investigation, Brian's girlfriend was taken to a hospital for an assault forensic examination. The DNA evidence collected from her exam was sent to the New Jersey State Police Laboratory for analysis. Investigators hoped this would help point them toward the attacker. The DNA profile was entered into the FBI's national database, but no matches were found. Without a suspect or a DNA match, the investigation reached a standstill. With no new leads to pursue, the case went cold, leaving Brian's case unresolved for the time being. In 2022, 11 years later, the police made a breakthrough in the long-dormant case. After years without progress, the investigators were able to identify the suspect as Kinyar Hill. Hill was determined to be a high-stringency match for the DNA profile that had been collected during the initial investigation in 2011. This development reopened the path towards solving Brian's case. To confirm the match, the authorities obtained a buccal swab from Hill. The sample was compared with the swabs from the assault forensic examination conducted on Brian's girlfriend the night of the stabbing. The comparison confirmed the DNA link, providing strong forensic evidence that connected Hill to the crime scene and the events of that night. Following the confirmation, the detectives intensified their work. They revisited the original investigation and began tracking down witnesses from more than a decade earlier. These witnesses were re-interviewed in hopes of gathering new statements and additional evidence that could strengthen the case against Hill. Over the course of their renewed efforts, the investigators compiled a case they believed would withstand legal scrutiny. The combination of DNA evidence and witness testimony provided the foundation for formal charges. This marked a turning point in a case that had remained unresolved for nearly 14 years. On June 26, 2025, the authorities announced that 46-year-old Hill had been formally charged in the first degree. The announcement signaled the end of Hill's anonymity in the case and the beginning of his journey through the court system. The following day, on June 27th, Hill was arrested in Camden by the U.S. Marshals Service. He was taken into custody without incident and placed in the Camden County Correctional Facility. Hill remains detained there, awaiting trial.